Hello there, this is Kyle with Helium, and I'm here to show you a quick little demo of an end-to-end integration between Customer Fields and Yotpo using Zapier. I've already got a Zap set up here in Zapier that uses a popular trigger from our application, which is the new form submission, and then an action within Yotpo for updating a customer profile. I believe this is going to be the most popular use case for merchants where a customer is going to be submitting a form on the storefront of a merchant's Shopify store. And that form in particular would have some additional custom fields that aren't supported natively by Shopify. And getting that information from the form to save over into Yotpo using the custom profile properties. So just a real quick run through of this particular Zap. I have obviously connected it to the Customer Fields app, and I'm using the event for new form submission. This is the particular store that I'm connected to for this demo, and I have selected a specific form from the app, and I'll show you that in just a second here, but it's called Registration and Edit Account, and that is a custom form that was created, effectively something a merchant can do. Once that form submission comes in, we're going to use this update action in Yotpo, obviously connected to the Yotpo app, using the event for update customer profile properties. This is my Yotpo, I'm assuming this is the app ID or something like that. For the customer identifier, in most cases, email is going to be the best. Typically, most forms that are used on customer fields will collect an email address, or at least an email address will be on file. So I've used email as the identifier, and then I've mapped the email address to use the variable from our form payload. And as you can see, I am mapping gender, obviously a standard field in Yotpo, not a standard field in Shopify, but it happens to be a field that's on the form. Again, I'll show you that in a moment here. That is mapped to a gender variable. And then we have some additional custom properties, one for skin tone mapped to a skin tone variable, and then another one for birth date, which is mapped to a birthday variable. So just popping over into the Customer Fields app, you can see the form that I've created here has all of the fields in question kind of mapped out on it here. These are all just the basic details, typically minimum requirements to create a customer record with an active account in Shopify. I do have the checkbox on here for email marketing consent, also known as accepts marketing. And obviously Yotpo is picking up on those properties too. And then there's this extra section in here for personal profile, which is in this particular use case optional information. And there's one field here for gender, another one for birthday, and another one for skin tone. All of this data is saved into Shopify using Shopify's meta fields. Kind of irrelevant, but also as something to just keep in mind if the merchant wanted to use this information outside of Yotpo on their storefront, whether it's theme customizations or something else, they have access to that data. And I'll show you some of that in the Shopify admin in just a second here. But one thing to note is the gender field. In particular, Yotpo requires the values of this property to be specific. And so in Customer Fields, there's an option here that allows you to separate the labels and the values. As you can see, I have some labels here, which are nice user-friendly, but on the back end, the values that are being saved are the specific values that Yotpo requires. So for male, the value is capital M. For female, the value is capital F. And then for other, or prefer not to say, whatever they want, the value is going to be other. For the rest of these fields, they're pretty straightforward. Birthday is a regular date type, and skin tone is just a single line text field. And I've put a couple common values in here. With the use case example being, maybe a fashion store that, wants to collect some information about skin tone to sell them certain, face products or whatever based on that skin tone. So this particular form has been installed using our app embed theme app extension, and what it does is it actually will replace the theme's native registration form. It also allows customers to self-edit their own account using a quote-unquote edit profile page. And so on the storefront here, if we go to the store's native form, or native registration page, account/register, which is, by the way, used for classic accounts and classic accounts only. You can see this is the form that has actually been created by our Customer Fields app. It's just styled using the themes form styling. So we're going to go ahead and submit this form here. I'm just going to put in a fake email here. Now, this is obviously a plus address. So this is my real address, email address, this a plus account on here. So I can still get the emails as the end user and make email addresses unique because that is a requirement in Shopify. We'll leave the checkbox on here for email marketing consent. Obviously, for this particular use case, we want to have the email consent in Yotpo because then we can send out some campaigns or flows or do some other things. Now, even though these things are optional, for this use case, I want to show how the custom data gets transported over to Yotpo. So I'm going to define some values here for each of these things. And I'll do skin tone of pale. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click Create Account here. As soon as the account is created, I'm automatically logged in and shown the store's native account page, which is kind of the expected experience. If I go back into Shopify and refresh my customers list, we should see, there we go, Sally testing. This is the account that I just created, same email address. Now I have these meta field definitions pinned in the Shopify admin, and as you can see, the values that were submitted from the customer fields form are showing right here in Shopify. Again, I could also use these values as a merchant in Liquid if I wanted to, display some unique experience on the front end. For example, if my gender was male, I could customize the whole front end to show me different things based on my gender being male. All of that obviously would require some additional customization outside of our app, but certainly possible and a popular use case. That all being said, we've got a customer record here. Now I'm going to go back into Zapier just to confirm and see that we got a Zap run here. I'm going to move this over here. Let's refresh. There we go. Looks like we got a new successful task that came in. Let's just confirm the data out. This is all the data that was sent to Zapier. This is effectively the form payload here. And then we'll scroll down to the action for Zapier. And you can see this is the data that we sent into Zapier. So we've got the gender mapped here. We've got skin tone. We've got birthday. And then it looks like response was okay. I guess one thing to note also too on the Zap itself is when mapping custom data, or when mapping data in particular, you don't necessarily need to put in the standard fields. And that's because that information is going to come over by the native integration that Yotpo happens to have with Shopify. So things like first name and last name, I don't even have those mapped here because I'm just expecting that data to come over naturally from the native integration. So the use case here is really just the custom data. Obviously, again, gender is not supported by Shopify, so that's where customer fields would come in and collect that data from the customer. And then this particular Zap is mapping that additional data. So really, again, the only things that are mapped here in terms of the data transfer outside of the unique ID is going to be gender and the custom properties here for skin tone and birthday. So now that everything's all good to go, I can see that this task did run successfully. I'm going to come into Yotpo here and I'm going to go to my customer list. And there we go. We've got Sally testing in here. Obviously, the name came over from the native Shopify integration. Now, Yotpo, it still doesn't seem like it shows custom fields right here. So there's a couple different ways we can do it. The one that I already have set up just for the purpose of this demo is a segment. So I'm going to go into my segments here. I have a couple different segments set up. One of those is the male gender. If you remember, Sally I set as male here. So if we go into view, we should expect to see Sally on this list. This is the record I created today. And then let's just go back to some of these other custom lists I have. I have one for pale skin tone. I would expect to see Sally in here as well. And there we go, Sally testing, that's the one. Just to confirm some of the segment rules here, for this particular one, I'm using a custom property where skin_tone is equal to pale. That's obviously the value that I had submitted, and so it's come over that way. As far as end-to-end goes, I've shown you, the collection process, the form creation process somewhat on the customer field side. Obviously now, once this data is in Zapier, in Yotpo, there's a couple different things that can be done, including a campaign. So I've gone ahead and created a mock campaign here for email, exclusive product offer, pale skin tone. So go ahead and click edit on this. This happens to be using the audience or segment for pale skin tone. And then in here, I've got a subject line specifically for pale skin tones. And then in the actual body of the email, I'm using just a couple little variables. So we've got the first name variable in here. And how do we edit this? There we go. Click edit. Got the first name variable and then skin tone in here. And I was able to find that just by clicking this little guy. And you can see in profile here, there's a couple different variables that can be used, including the custom variables. And so for this example, I've just used the skin tone variable, which in this case would print out pale. Check out our latest and greatest products for pale skin tones. And then I could send this to my audience of customers that have a pale skin tone. I think this is one of the most popular use cases. We can certainly get into some others, but I think this covers a majority of the experience here in terms of getting Zapier and using Zapier as a bridge between Customer Fields and Yotpo. If anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be able to assist. Thanks again.